This reckon is he carries a baby for a sick wife by Toss. Like, so then link to the video will be the discipline on below. Go and check them out. So listen to this reckon in 3, 2, 1.
When 30 When 31-year-old Marcus Reynolds sat in the hospital's fertility clinic holding his wife Emma's trembling hand, he heard words that shattered their world. The chemotherapy will destroy any chance of pregnancy. We need to
Really?
start treatment immediately. Waiting even 2 weeks to freeze your eggs could cost you your life. Emma, pale and terrified, looked at Marcus with desperate eyes. That night, she whispered an impossible idea. What if you could carry our baby? What happened next would test the limits of love, sacrifice, and what it means to truly give everything for the person you love. Marcus and Emma Reynolds seemed like any other young couple in Portland, Oregon. He was a 31-year-old
What in
software engineer with a
okay.
quick laugh and kind eyes. She was 29, a brilliant pediatric oncologist who spent her days saving children's lives. They'd been married for 4 years and had just started trying for a baby when Emma's world collapsed. It started with fatigue she couldn't shake, then unexplained bruising. When she finally ran her own blood tests at the hospital where she worked, the results were devastating: acute myeloid leukemia and aggressive blood cancer. Stage
Whoa.
3. Her colleague Dr. Patterson told them gently, "We need to start chemotherapy immediately. The survival rate with aggressive treatment is about 40%. Emma, a doctor
Well,
herself,
only for
understood
40
exactly what that
percent.
meant. She had a coin flip chance of survival, and the chemotherapy would destroy any chance of pregnancy. The toxic drugs would damage her eggs irreparably, and her body would be too weak to carry a child even if she survived. I want to
Wow.
freeze my eggs before we start treatment," Emma said immediately. Dr. Patterson shook his head. "Emma, that would delay chemotherapy by at least 2 weeks for hormone stimulation and retrieval. With AML this aggressive, 2 weeks could be the difference between life and death. I can't recommend it." That night, Marcus and Emma held each other and cried. They were losing so much:
Wow.
her health, their future, the family they dreamed of
Yes.
building. But then Emma had an idea that seemed impossible. "What about you?" she asked Marcus. Marcus looked at her, confused. "What about me? You could carry our baby." Marcus stared at his wife. What she was suggesting seemed medically impossible. He was a man. He'd been living as a man for 12 years. But Emma knew Marcus's history because he'd shared it with her on their third date. Marcus had been born female, assigned the name Michelle at birth. He'd known from age 5 that he was a boy, but growing up in a conservative family in rural Ohio, there was no language
Oh,
for what
wow.
he felt. At 18, Marcus left for college and began his transition. Testosterone therapy
Yeah.
started at 19, reshaping his body, deepening his voice, growing facial hair, redistributing muscle and fat. At 22, he had top surgery. At 25, he had bottom surgery, a metoidioplasty, a procedure that used his existing tissue to create male anatomy. But like many trans men, Marcus had chosen not to have his uterus and ovaries removed. The additional surgery added significant cost and recovery time. Plus, he'd read about trans men who later regretted not having reproductive options. So he'd kept his internal organs, even though testosterone had shut down his menstrual cycle within months. For 12 years, that decision seemed irrelevant. Marcus was simply a man living his life. Until now. "Think about it," Emma said, sitting up in bed despite her exhaustion. "We could use my eggs before they're destroyed by chemo. We'd fertilize them with donor sperm that matches your characteristics. Then we'd implant the embryos in your uterus. You'd carry our baby." Marcus felt like he couldn't breathe. "Emma, I'm on testosterone. I haven't had a period in 11 years. I had bottom surgery. My body doesn't work that way anymore." "But your uterus is still there," Emma pressed gently. "I've been researching. There are documented cases of trans men who've gotten pregnant after years on testosterone. It's rare, but possible. You'd have to stop testosterone temporarily, let your system reactivate, but it could work." "Even if it could work physically," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Do you understand what you're asking? I'd have to stop the hormones that make me feel like myself. My body would feminize. I'd be visibly pregnant. The dysphoria would be—" He couldn't finish. The thought of his body becoming pregnant, of people seeing him as female, of undoing everything he'd fought for, it was terrifying. But Emma took his hands, tears streaming down her face. "I know what I'm asking. I know it's
Yeah.
enormous. But Marcus, I might die. The cancer is aggressive. Even with treatment,
Yeah.
my chances aren't good. If I do survive, I want us to have a family. And if I don't, her voice broke. I want to leave you something. A piece of me. A child we created together. You'd be doing what my body can't do. You'd be giving us both the family we wanted. Marcus looked at his wife, pale, weak, facing death, and felt something shift inside him. Let me think about it, he whispered. Marcus spent 3 days wrestling with the decision. He talked to his therapist, who specialized in gender issues. He consulted his endocrinologist, who confirmed that pregnancy after long-term testosterone use was medically possible if he stopped the hormones and allowed his reproductive system to reactivate. He thought about what it would mean.
Yeah.
Stopping testosterone would affect his mood, his body, his sense of self. Pregnancy would make him visibly different, trigger intense dysphoria, expose
Oof.
him to judgment and questions. But
Yeah.
then he thought about Emma dying without leaving part of herself behind.
Yeah.
He thought about growing old alone, with no piece of the woman he loved. He thought about what love actually means when it's tested. On the third day, Marcus told Emma his decision. I'll do it. I'll carry our baby. Emma burst into tears. Are you sure? I can't ask you to sacrifice this much. You're not asking, Marcus said firmly. I'm choosing. Your body can't do this, but mine can. That's what marriage means, using what we have to give what's needed. The next 2 weeks moved frantically. Before Emma could start chemotherapy, she underwent aggressive hormone stimulation to produce multiple eggs. The process was painful and exhausting for her already weakened body, but she endured it. The medical team retrieved 14 eggs. In the lab, they fertilized 12 using donor sperm carefully selected to match Marcus's characteristics, similar build, coloring, and features, so the
14.
child
Wow.
would resemble both parents. 10 embryos successfully developed. They froze 8 and prepared to implant 2 in Marcus. Meanwhile, Marcus stopped testosterone. Within days, he felt the change, his emotions more volatile, his body slowly shifting. It felt like losing himself piece by piece,
Yeah.
but he held on to why he was doing it. After 6 weeks, Marcus's reproductive system had reactivated enough. Doctors performed the embryo transfer, implanting 2 embryos directly into his uterus through a thin catheter. 2 weeks later, Marcus took a pregnancy test. Positive. He was carrying Emma's baby. Emma started chemotherapy the same
Yeah.
week Marcus's pregnancy was confirmed. She was desperately ill, vomiting, losing her hair, so weak she could barely stand.
Wow.
Marcus, meanwhile, experienced early pregnancy symptoms, severe morning sickness, exhaustion, emotional turbulence. But he couldn't complain. His wife was fighting for her life. His
Yeah.
discomfort seemed trivial in comparison. The dysphoria was worse than he'd imagined. Looking in the mirror at his changing body,
Well, yep. That's a baby bump.
softer skin, rounder belly, felt like watching himself disappear. But he'd place his hand on his stomach and think, Emma's baby, our baby. At 12 weeks, an ultrasound confirmed one healthy fetus. The other embryo hadn't developed. Marcus mourned the lost twin, but celebrated the surviving child. Emma's treatment was brutal. Some days she was too sick to speak, but she'd place her thin hand on Marcus's growing belly and whisper, our miracle. By Marcus's second trimester, Emma had a brief period of improvement. The cancer seemed to be responding to treatment. For a few precious weeks, they dared to hope. Marcus
Mm.
couldn't hide his pregnancy. At 5 months, his belly was obvious. Colleagues
Yep.
at work noticed. Friends asked
Yep. That's a
questions.
baby bump.
Marcus and Emma decided to tell the truth. They sent an email to close friends and family explaining the situation. Emma's cancer, Marcus's transgender history, their decision to have Marcus carry their baby. The responses varied wildly. Some people were supportive and amazed. Others were confused or uncomfortable. Marcus's conservative parents struggled but ultimately said, we just want you both healthy and the baby safe. Strangers were the hardest. In public, people would say, congratulations, Mama. Marcus would quietly correct them, I'm the father. The confusion, the stares, the awkward apologies, it happened constantly. But Emma was there,
Wow.
weak but present, defending him fiercely whenever she had the strength. That's my husband, she'd say firmly.
Oh, look at baby bump. Oh.
He's carrying our baby because I can't. Show some respect. At
Yeah.
28 weeks pregnant, Emma's cancer returned with a vengeance. The brief remission ended. The leukemia came back more aggressive than before. We can try a different chemotherapy protocol, Dr. Patterson said gently. But Emma, I need to be honest. The chances of this working are very small. Emma knew what that meant. She was
Oh,
dying. Over the next
yes.
weeks, as Marcus's belly grew larger with their daughter, Emma grew weaker. She spent most days in the hospital, but insisted on being discharged whenever possible to be home with Marcus. I need to feel her kick, Emma would say, placing her thin hands on Marcus's belly. I need to talk to her. Marcus would lie beside his dying wife, her hands on his pregnant stomach, and they'd both cry. For the time they wouldn't have, for the life Emma wouldn't see, for the daughter she'd never watch grow up. Promise
Yes.
me, Emma whispered one night. Promise me you'll tell her about me. Every day? Promise me she'll know how much I wanted her, how much I loved her before I ever met her. I promise, Marcus sobbed. I promise. At 34 weeks, Marcus's doctors decided the baby needed to be delivered early. His blood pressure was dangerously high. The stress of pregnancy combined with the emotional trauma of watching Emma die was taking its toll. Emma was in the hospital, fading fast. She'd been unconscious for 2 days. We need to do the
Oh,
C-section tomorrow, Dr. Kim told Marcus. Your body can't sustain this much longer. That night, Marcus sat beside Emma's hospital bed, holding her hand, his other hand on his belly. Emma, if you can hear me, please hold on one more day. Please meet our daughter. Please. The next morning, they wheeled Emma's bed into the operating room. She was barely conscious, kept alive by machines, but Dr. Patterson agreed to let her be present for the birth. Marcus lay on the operating table, Emma's bed positioned beside him. He held her hand as the doctors worked. Finally, a cry pierced the air. It's a girl, Dr. Kim announced.
oh,
A beautiful, healthy girl. They placed the tiny baby on
congratulations.
Marcus's chest first. He looked down at her perfect face, Emma's eyes, his nose, and sobbed. Emma,
Oh,
look, he said desperately, turning toward his wife. Look at our daughter. She's here. She's perfect. For one brief, miraculous moment, Emma's eyes fluttered open. She looked at the baby on Marcus's chest, and the faintest smile crossed her lips. Her fingers twitched, trying to reach toward them. The nurses quickly brought the baby to Emma's side, placing the tiny girl on Emma's chest. Emma's hand, trembling and weak, touched her daughter's head. One tear rolled down her cheek. Hope, Emma whispered, barely audible. Her name is Hope. Those were the last words Emma Reynolds ever spoke. 2 hours later, with Marcus and baby Hope beside her, Emma passed away. The weeks after Emma's death were the
oh,
darkest of Marcus's life. He was recovering from major
oh. Rest in peace to Imba. Rest in peace.
surgery,
Wow.
adjusting to a newborn, grieving his wife, and dealing with the hormonal chaos of postpartum while trying to restart testosterone. His body was a stranger to him, soft, changed by pregnancy, marked by the C-section scar. His emotions were shattered. Some days he could barely get out of bed, but Hope needed him. This tiny girl, the last piece of Emma, the product of their love and his sacrifice, needed her father. Marcus's mother moved in to help. Friends brought meals. The community that had seemed judgmental during his pregnancy now rallied around him. A widowed father with a newborn, grieving an impossible loss. Slowly,
Yes.
Marcus began resuming testosterone. His body gradually remasculinized over the following months. His voice deepened again, his body composition shifted back. The physical reminder of pregnancy faded, but the emotional scars remained. Every time
Yes.
Hope smiled, Marcus saw Emma. Every milestone, first smile, first laugh, first time rolling over, was a joy mixed with devastating sadness that Emma wasn't there to see it. Marcus returned to
Yes.
work when Hope was 4 months old, working from home as much as possible. He was a single father now, navigating parenthood alone. He kept his promise to Emma. Every single day, Marcus told Hope about her mother. Your mama was the strongest person I ever knew, he'd say, holding Hope close. She was a doctor who saved children's lives. She was brilliant and
Yes.
kind and so brave. She fought cancer while you were growing inside me.
Really
She
brave.
held on just long enough to meet you, to name you, to touch your face. Her last word was your name, Hope. As Hope grew, Marcus filled their home with photos of Emma, videos of her laughing, recordings of her voice. Emma's parents visited often, sharing stories and keeping their daughter's memory alive. When people asked about Hope's mother, Marcus never hid the truth. Her mother died shortly after she was born. I carried Hope because my wife couldn't. Hope is our miracle. the last gift Emma
Yeah.
gave me before she left. Marcus's story became known in medical circles, a testament to the extraordinary lengths love can drive someone to and the possibilities of modern reproductive medicine. But
Yeah.
the deeper lesson was about sacrifice and love. Marcus had given his body, his comfort, his sense of self for 9 months to give Emma the one thing she wanted most, to create a
Yeah.
child before she died. Hope was Emma's legacy, proof that her life mattered, that her love continued even after death, that she'd left something beautiful in the world. And Marcus, this man who'd endured physical and emotional agony, carried not just a baby, but the final dream of his dying wife.
Yeah.
His manhood wasn't diminished by pregnancy. It was defined by his willingness to do something extraordinarily difficult because love demanded it.
Yeah.
Today, Hope is 18 months old. She has her mother's eyes and her father's smile. She's a happy, healthy toddler who will grow up knowing she was wanted desperately by two parents who loved her before she existed. Marcus has been back on testosterone for over a year. His body returned to its masculine baseline. He's a single father, a widower, a man who carried his dying wife's child and now raises that child alone.
Yeah.
He still grieves Emma every day. But when Hope wraps her tiny arms around his neck and says, Dada, he feels Emma's presence in their daughter's laugh, in her curiosity, in her kindness. Emma is gone, but her love remains
Yeah.
forever in the shape of a daughter. Hope is the living embodiment of a love so strong it transcended death, of a sacrifice so profound it changed what seemed possible. So here's my question. What would you sacrifice for the person you love? Would you give up your body, your comfort, your identity, temporarily, to give them their dying wish? What would you have done if you were
Yeah.
Marcus? If
If I was Marcus, I would do that something. Yeah.
you were Emma? Drop your thoughts below. Because sometimes, the most powerful love stories aren't about happy endings.
Ooh,
They're
yeah.
about the
Yeah.
sacrifices we make when we know
Yeah.
time is running out.
Wow. That was EKVCBB for a sick wealth by Decker Toss. The link to the video will be the description below. Go and check them out and drop a like if you like. And comment below if you want to see more reaction like this one. And subscribe if you're new. And click the post so you can be notified for a minute below and minute post in my bye. Wow.